Good morning. This is the Oneness Talking Point with Melanie Brockwell, the face on the screen if you're watching the video and the voice on the MP3 if you're just listening in. This is episode 15, Purpose, P-U-R-P-O-S-E, Purpose. And I guess if you looked it up in a dictionary, you would get a very different sense of what it is than if you spoke to someone who's into metaphysics, which would be very different to talking to me or listening to me about purpose. And I have a little bit of a nasally thing going on. My husband and I have had the strangest flu the last 2 weeks, so you'll have to just bear with me, I guess. I'm trying out Photo Booth and then uploading it to YouTube this week, mostly because we've had some streaming issues with lag, and that doesn't affect the people that listen to the MP3, but it makes the video a strange proposition, watching someone whose voice doesn't quite match up with the screen in front of you. I'm not sure what I want to say about purpose. I guess you can rag on other people's concepts of it, but I'm not sure how helpful that is in the oneness experience of just trying to comprehend your own sense of how this is sacred, no matter what this is, no matter what it appears to be or feels or seems as if that's going on in this moment, which is really where the focus is for someone who's interested in the oneness experience. Their focus is on what does it mean to me, and it's tempting to kind of understand that as layers. The first layer of what does it mean to me is the sensoriness, what we call or understand as the sensoriness. So we call them physical body, biological symptoms and sensations. So the sore throat or the hotness or the tension. And then we add another layer to that biology and sense of identity of self in an emotional category. So, on top of that tension, we might say there's a feeling of frustration, which is a purely emotional assessment of what's going on. Frustration doesn't turn up in your finger. It's a label that you put on a collection of things that you're feeling. And even that sense of feeling is another layer. It's another category that we've separated out from the experience of now. So that awareness of those layers is, one way of people coming to terms with their oneness experience and just accepting that that's part of the vernacular of how they're labeling what's happening for them, how they're understanding, comprehending, culturally aware of what's going on. And then in the allowing of that, whether the allowing of that is, and that's a problem because I should be in oneness and there's no layers, or the allowing of that is, isn't that interesting? There's a self with a biological and an emotional, and they're separate, and, how fascinating it all is. And then the allowing of that is also not, from a higher place of understanding. The allowing of that is, for want of a better term, an embodiment. So it's the full experience of, and allowing is the full experience of. And I guess what happens for me and, for people who have the oneness experience is that allowing is cradled by trust. So even though the realness of what's going on can be bitter, or the realness of that can be frustrating, or whatever label you want to put on that, frightening, painful, there's no sense that the realness of those experiences is separate from the sacredness of all that is. So it's not separate from the wholeness, and neither is or are your inclinations. So when I talk about being perfect for your purpose in this moment, excuse me, I'm including all of the things that are going on, all of the labels that participate in your experience of now, all of the things we call judgments. We're not kind of taking anything out and looking down from above and saying, in the oneness experience, it would be different. We're just saying the fullness of that experience of now is embodied with trust, including those moments of doubt, which I know sounds contradictory. But when you're having the experience, it doesn't. So you're having the experience of doubt, knowing that it's trustworthy, that it's important, that it's equally sacred to whatever the next moment is. And you're able to leave each moment and have each moment as a wholeness. There's no sense that the doubt will take you somewhere else. Even though you know it's ephemeral, you understand that the concept of what's going on won't last. Perhaps that's just a rationale that comes along with the innate trust of being in the wholeness of what's going on. Including, and I guess that's it, it's like there's this constant inclusion. So rather than being in that moment of doubt, going, I need to remove this in order to be present, or I need to change this or block this out in order to be present. There's an inclusiveness, and that inclusiveness is seems contradictory, but it's not while you're having it. So the inclusiveness is, I need to walk out the room. That's the understanding that you have. That's the message that you get. But it's not the meaning in the moment. You trust that the meaning in the moment is on purpose. So it's not really about, I need to be outside somewhere else. If you had to think about it, which you don't because you trust it, you would understand that the meaning of that message is an inclusive story. So it's just giving you the information that you need to have in that moment in order for you to play the part that you're playing that isn't a part at all. So in the oneness experience of all that is, that makes sense to me, the self is not a fixed thing. And so the part that's being played is all that is having an experience that looks like me and seems like me, but isn't anything but all that is. And so the realness of me is part of that experience for all that is, which I don't exist separately from. I am an experience of. So it's not like I'm the vessel and the purpose of my life must be fulfilled while all that is kind of looking down on me and guiding me here and there. I am the child of the universe. I am all that is in the expression of whatever is going on at this moment. And the need for my perception to include skin and borders and whatever is part of that story, is part of that wholeness. So I don't need to question it. I don't need to see it as an illusion. I don't need to try and remove it, and reveal something else. There's no sense that I have to be anything other than what's going on now. Even when I've got, a nasally voice, or the internet connection is kind of jamming up and making the voice and the image not match up. There's no sense that any of that is out of place. And you just keep including. And so even the frustration about those things, if you feel frustration about those things, is included. And so you include it as sacred. And if something comes into your mind, like just then I was thinking, so what about all the horrible things that happen to children on the planet? You include that, yes. So what about all the horrible things that, that's the experience of all that is, having an experience. I'm allowed to have the feelings I have about that stuff without imposing those feelings as a separateness, as a judgment upon all that is having that experience. And I don't have a sense of division between participant and witness. Then there's no self that's separate. So the experience that all that is that looks like me, looks like they're having a reaction, and feels like they want to be in politics, or seems like they just can't bear it and, don't watch TV. Like, all of those things are included. So you're just constantly including all of those things as sacred, rather than trying to put things in ticky-tacky little boxes in order to make sense of them, to figure out where you should be. And here's where the strangeness gets even stranger, because if that's the experience you're having, then that's included. So in the oneness experience, if the desire to put things into ticky-tacky little boxes in order to better comprehend what is sacred makes sense to you, or is the thing that you're doing, then that's included. And in the next moment, if it's then how is that possible, and this is crazy, and then that's included. And it's just this constant inclusion. So rather than even the rejections. So if you are rejecting, or if I am rejecting an aspect of self, or a thing that I've said, or I feel bad about something, or whatever, that's included. All of those things are included. There's no point where the cradle of trust is broken. There's no point where the sense of wholeness and inseparableness is broken. It just doesn't. Everything is flow. Everything is on purpose. Which is not about righteousness for me. It's not about having an impact and all of those things, which, I allow other people to have those conversations, both about what I do and about what they do. But for me, the doing and not doing are the same thing. The self and other are the same thing. There's no sense of separation between my simply being and my being on purpose and all that is having its experience. So none of those things need to be rationalized for me. I still make decisions about what's going on, and, I still want to be fair and I don't know, and to love people and all of those things that you think of as normal human desires. And it is a but, because those things are subjective. All of those things are subjective in the moment, with the information that you have, with the beingness that you are. So, whatever collection of things you want to add into that basket, whether it be culture or upbringing or whatever, the cosmological wholeness of who you are in that moment determines what fairness and what love is, and, whatever other things you're attached to. And you are attached to them if you're not attached to a sense of trust. And so above all, I trust. So that fairness will go out the window in moments where I am asked to trust that this is important. That sense of wanting, I don't know whether love was a good example. My sense of love is a bit different to other people's, apparently. My sense of love is that I want them to have what they want, not what I want for them. I want them to, like, for example, in my relationships, I want the person to be with the person that they love. And if that happens not to be me, then I want them to leave and be with the person that they love. And if it happens to be, no one else, but still not me, then I want them to have what they want, because I love them. That's how love makes sense to me. It's not that I want them in my life to make me happy. Which reminds me of that story about the flower, the difference between like and love. I can't remember where I got it from. I think maybe it's a Zen thing. They say if you like a flower, you pick it and smell it and have it in your house and put it in your hair and, carry it around with you. But if you love a flower, you leave it where it is and you let it grow. I think for me, my sense of love is the leaving it where it is and letting it be a flower. Now I've got off track and I can't remember what I was talking about. So fairness and love. So my overarching influence is trust. If I'm told to do something which doesn't make sense in the cultural vernacular that we're engaging in here, then I will do that without evidence, without reason, without a sense of who gets what out of it, without a safety net. I don't have a sense of outcomes. I do what I'm told. And it's not a voice. It's not like there's someone going, Melanie, walk out the door and turn left. And sometimes that it's a very directness that happens if there's something going on. But I guess my sense of instruction is everything. So the feelings, the things we've called feelings for me are instruction, and the things we call sickness are instruction, and the things we call technological difficulties are instruction. Everything for me is an invitation. The birds singing, it's like there's an automaticness in my perception that allows me to be tuned to the loudest point, and to trust that the loudest point is part of my instruction, and to have that experience in its wholeness, and to allow that to be just this moment with all of the intensity that brings. And for me, that means everything is on purpose, and I can't be outside of that, because trust is the thing that exists for me. It's the only constant in my existence. Everything else is mutable, it changes, it flows, it fluxes, it's here and it's not. But the one thing that doesn't is trust, which is why life and death aren't life and death. Which is why I don't have an attachment to things being a certain way. You have to be healthy. Okay, well, what does that mean? I have to be having this experience. This is what's important. You can decide that I need to be healthy. You have that experience and see how that goes for you. But I'm just going to trust this moment. I'm just going to trust what is, And again, we come back to that, but how do you participate? Trust is a participation. It's not a sit back and let things happen to you, because that would mean that there are things outside of you that are disconnected from you that can happen to you. Trust is an innately inseparable wholeness. So you trust that the sickness that you feel, or the thing that we've labelled sickness that you feel, is an important part of the whole. And that it's part of a conversation, like one long sentence that is the whole, like one spectrum that is a circle that has no end and no beginning. So whatever this experience is that seems like me, that feels like the flu, isn't separate from anything else. So there's no need to, bring about change or a homeostasis or whatever. It's the present centeredness, the glory and grace of being in this moment, having this experience, is enough for me. Maybe not for other proponents of the oneness experience. Maybe for them, their sense of provocation is different. And, like we say every episode, whatever this prompts you to become aware of in your own truth is the only thing that matters. You're not being indoctrinated. No one's trying to teach you anything. There's no teaching and learning. Whatever is true for you is coming to the surface, for want of a better way of describing it. So whatever reactions you're having, let them play into your truth. So if you're having a violent reaction against one of the things that has been said, then if it wasn't a reaction and it was just your truth telling you what it is, that it exists, what is it telling you? So if it wasn't in an argument with anyone else, if it was just you standing there on your soapbox, allowing your truth to have a voice, what would it say? And if it's similar but not the same, then what is it? And if you've never thought about it and you're still not sure and it feels like you don't have your own version, then maybe you don't need one. I mean, what happens when you think about it that way? What if you don't need to have a theory or a comprehension of? I never thought about how I operate in the world before I started getting asked questions about how do I stay present? How do I not take on other people's stuff? How do I, all the things that people perceived I was doing. And they, how did you not think homelessness was a terrible thing? How did you not store, miscarriage as a terrible trauma? How did you have a curiosity, a compassionate curiosity about things that other people get very upset about? How do you not stress about money? Like, how do you have the relationship that you have with your partner that just seems like two kids playing in the park? People observe and they want to know how that works, and so they ask questions. And I have this thing, I just answer questions. I'm not sure what that is, but sometimes afterwards I go, what? They had no right to ask me that question, and yet I just answered it. Why do I do that? And that's just included. That's just, part of the wholeness of what's going on in this moment. So maybe you don't need an awareness. I know lots of people that operate in the world that don't need an awareness. So this is the first Oneness Talking Point episode using Photo Booth. I'm going to upload it to YouTube and we'll see how that goes. And if it feels like this is the way, then we probably won't have live videos for a bit. How do you feel about that, people? Let me know. We can always do some other thing, like a follow-up. So maybe I do the video and then you want to have a Google Hangout Q&A afterwards to see what happens for you. It sounds like a brilliant idea. All right, I'll talk to you next week.